For asking. Yeah, he's um, he's hoping that it's going to work out and he'll be able to buy here, which will be great. But in the meantime, he needs a furnished place to stay. So, well, they're traveling nurses, so they're pretty shot at night. They. Has a microphone, so we are going to record again since we're here. We thought, and we have audio. When we have a smaller group than this, especially if we're having audio, we might move down the hall into the library space. But I think with the number that we have here, and since we have the audio, we'll meet here again today. And then we'll record it, too, for those this way who can't be here, because that's one plus. So if you've got a comment, question, and I hope you will have lots, Jen's got the microphone there, and that way not only can everybody hear in this room, but also the folks who might join us online at some point. So let's talk about the prophet Isaiah. I asked you to read the first, what is traditionally considered the first book of Isaiah. And you might be thinking, there's only one book of Isaiah. Well, when I say traditionally, that's not even quite right. It's more like what modern scholarship has identified as the first, how to put this, they call it the first book because it's the first clearly sort of freestanding section that might reflect different authorship even than what comes after it. It's commonly observed that Isaiah 1 to 39 these chapters have their own sort of internal coherence, and they have their own kind of tone even too, and it tends to be a little darker tone. You got these judgments pronounced against the nations, and then those are punctuated with God's judgment against the whole world. The whole world is going to be wiped out by God. And interspersed, Tam mentioned this last time, in these judgment prophecies are these just lofty, beautiful prophecies that give kind of hope. And there's this great passage, Isaiah 11, which people unfamiliar with the Bible are familiar with. Isaiah 11, the peaceable kingdom, the wolf lays with the lamb, right? And the lamb and the lion and the fatling together, a little child will lead them. This just beautiful vision of no violence and conflict on God's mountain, on God's in the day of the Lord. Isaiah 25, on this mountain I will prepare a feast for all peoples, a rich feast, and the shroud that is cast over all peoples will be taken away. Death will be no more. Yeah, the book of Revelation makes a direct allusion, quotes Isaiah 25 basically. So you have in Isaiah 1 to 39 these sort of lofty statements of God's promises to God's people and salvation and deliverance and freedom from oppression, but in the midst of just some really dark, harsh words of judgment. So we can talk more about, and then but just to finish that thought, when you get to chapter 40 and on, it gets lighter, if you're wondering. The last half or the last bit, a little less than half of Isaiah, last 26 chapters. They're the prepare a highway for a voice of one crying in the desert, prepare a highway for our God. Every mountain shall be made low and valley shall be lifted up. It's the great prophecy that even youths will not grow faint. I'm sorry, even elderly will not grow faint. They will run like youths. They will rise up on wings of eagles, right? So you'll have this beautiful vision in the latter half. And so some of that feeds into this modern take that you have. And you have kind of at least 2, maybe even 3 breaks in the book of Isaiah that might indicate different periods of composition, different editorial inputs, and we don't have to dive too deeply into all of that. We can if you like, but because even after we've observed all that, most people then say, so what? We have a book here that falls under the name of a great prophet of Israel, and of course we expect, and there's even allusion mentioned in the book of Isaiah, you read it, to Isaiah having disciples. We know conclusively that prophets were not just individuals without anyone around them ever. They were parts of schools, really. They were sort of the leaders. All the schools had prophets within them, but then you have figures like Isaiah who emerge as some of the clearest voices, some of the most profound visionaries. And so if Isaiah's school of thought took hold and later inspired other visions in his trajectory of thought or something like that, well, who cares, right? The important point is that what we have here is a vision of God for God's people, something like that. But okay, so enough from me for a minute. I just wanted to sketch that out. Why did I stop it here? Well, as I said, for 2 reasons. One, I want to not give you too much. Isaiah's a long book, in case you couldn't tell. It's a lot to read, right? There you go. Thank you. And Darla's even brought coffee. Thank you. I was going to say, load up Leanna. She'll have it. I wanted to break up Isaiah anyway so that you weren't having to read it all at once. And we'll do the same with Jeremiah, another very long prophetic book. So I was looking for a place to break it up. And I thought, well, let's break it here in this spot that is perennially viewed as being the breaking point. Yeah, Gordon. Oh, yes, thank you.
Thanks. As you were speaking, I wondered if there was any overlap between a school of prophets and scribes, or was there real separation of the 2 functions, or is it just not known?
I think more the latter. It's a great question. Scribes, we can see very clearly, end up having a sort of playing an interpretive role, and not just copying, but then sort of integrating stuff into the text. Where does that happen? And going back and deep into ancient Israel's history, are the prophets the ones the schools of the prophets, are they sort of filtering into the scribal tradition? Maybe. But basically, yeah, I'll just put it this way. I am not aware of anyone who's been able to discern a clean answer to that. As we get farther along in Israel's history, the scribal tradition is definitely its own tradition, tasked mainly with copying manuscripts, if you like. But with the composition of Isaiah, for instance, and other biblical books, and we've talked a little bit about this, you can discern sort of like, yeah, sure, I'll take since Darla made it, Thank you, Darla. All right. It's going fast. It looks like what we have is, and it's a good question because I want to get some thoughts on your own take on how it felt to read these chapters. Was it confusing? Did they seem to all sort of flow together, or did they all just sort of seem to stand like, well, these sort of fit together and then seems like a totally different idea? Or what was your impression? And the reason for that is to answer your question, Gordon. Well, let me come back to you so that I don't prejudice the answer that might be given. What do you think? I always want to open with this question anyway. You read these chapters. What do you think? what's your first impression of Isaiah? Yeah, Leo.
All right, my general impression was kind of, big picture, nothing's really changed. All this strife and arguing and fighting and people thinking they're right, and it's very applicable to today. And I think this is a good stretch of the Bible that reminds me of that. It's not a whole different time and place where we can't translate what's happening then to now. It just shows that everything's very applicable to us now.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad. I appreciate you sharing that. You found some resonance, with this, just the tone, the nature, the tone of judgment maybe, but also, I don't know, maybe some hope in there. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Leo. What else? What other first impressions do we have as you've read these opening chapters of Isaiah? Yeah, Becky. For the folks at home.
I apologize.
That's okay.
The glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
It will be okay eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. You just go for these chapters of condemnation, and then boom, all of a sudden this this great statement of God's salvation and God's deliverance is coming, and it's a good. Yeah. Do you find that jarring at all? I mean. Well, let me ask it this way. As you were reading, did it feel like you were reading a narrative from start to finish? Or did it feel more like you're reading just like snapshots or something else? I mean, how did it feel as you're reading it?
I felt like it was an anthology of the sequence of prophecies that seem to correspond to the span of history within the prophetic school.
Good.
And the language is pretty electric. I just happen to have my Bible open to Isaiah 1.
Yeah.
Where it begins the lament for Jerusalem in verse 21. Contrast. The faithful city, comma, what a harlot she has become.
Yeah. Yeah.
Zion, once full of fair judgment, where saving justice used to dwell, but now assassins.
Yeah. Yikes. Very good. Thank you, Gordon. That helps illustrate these strong words of condemnation. And one of the reasons why Isaiah, I think, stands as such a prominent voice in Israel's history, why he's considered the greatest of the later prophets. It's that kind of ability to capture with such vivid imagery the unfaithfulness of God's people, which is, of course, part of the role of the prophet, right? It is to call people over against the law of God. Here's how we're behaving, and to do that with a certain fearlessness and certain courage, even against very powerful people, at whatever cost it comes to the prophet. And boy, does Isaiah do that really powerfully, right? Minces no words, pulls no punches, to use those expressions. That's absolutely right. But Gordon used a word earlier. He said it read to him like an anthology, so a collection. Did anyone else have that kind of a feeling as you were reading it, or not? A series.
If you watch this show, you watch the episodes.
Yeah.
There's some, if you've seen prior episodes, you know what references are.
Yeah.
And it kind of give those shots of what might be coming next.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. That's a good way of putting it, like a series, like a TV series. So yeah, if you, there are signals in the text that's exactly what we have, is episodes, to use the series language, collections of what would eventually have been writing. So these ancient schools, they're oral traditions that are getting memorized and shared and talked about. There are prophets and there are false prophets. And so there are schools disagreeing with each other about what's going to happen. The false prophets tend to be the ones that say, peace, peace, all is going to be fine. Don't worry, king, you're doing a great job. We love you. And, the king rewards those prophets, and then something bad does happen, right? And the true prophet is the one who had the courage to say, All is not going to be peace, king. You keep acting like this, we keep acting like this, we've forsaken the Lord will forsake us. That's the kind of the logic, right? But there are, so there's some signs in the text that this isn't just one person sitting down to write something out like from beginning to end. And I just share that because if we realize that, it can make it a little easier to read, even if you want to revisit it. If we realize that what's happened here is we have individual prophecies at distinct points in time, speaking to distinct events that got memorized and then eventually recorded, and then brought together in a collection. And then that collection over time, back to your first question, Gordon, was maybe edited. So what we have then are disciples of a prophet passing along this prophet's teaching, collecting this teaching, but over time, editing it maybe as well. And then later generations are doing the same thing. Now they have this collection that they are further editing, and that's what we have in Isaiah. And why I say certain signs. So if you just look at chapter 1, verse 1, the vision of Isaiah, son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Chapter 2, verse 1, the word that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It's kind of repetitive. We don't hear that again, though, until chapter 13, verse 1. The oracle concerning Babylon that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw. So here you have, so you can even hear in that first just simple language. So here's a vision that Isaiah saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Here's another vision that Isaiah saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Here's another vision that Isaiah saw, but not concerning Judah and Jerusalem at all, concerning Babylon, which is a total foreign enemy of Israel. In fact, a later enemy of Israel. Later meaning maybe this is the school's input here, right? Something like that. Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to see. This is where we get into one of the challenges of the prophets and a question that I have for you. When you think of prophecy, how much of it, because we're now getting into the prophetic chunk of the Old Testament. We've heard prophecy in the past. We've heard Elijah, Elisha, Moses is a prophet. And they speak prophetically, right? Moses, we've heard. We read together. Look, we're going to go into this land. And if you don't do these things, this is what's going to happen, right? So this is Moses speaking prophetically. But when you hear that word, but now we're coming into the prophetic books, right? Isaiah, Jeremiah, not so much Lamentations, but Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, so on and so forth, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. There you go. That's what we got in front of us. So these are the prophets. And when you think big picture then, since we're wading in now to the prophets, you hear the word prophecy, and what comes to, how would you, I don't know, if you were teaching confirmation like I will be again next week, and one of the 12-year-olds asked, what is prophecy? You would say, okay, let's go, maybe Linda, and then if you don't mind, Jen, sorry to have you get your steps over to Karen.
No, I just said foretelling.
Foretelling, okay, all right, very good. A vision. Okay, Dan has vision, okay. What did Karen have? Vision, okay. Vision, foretelling, all right. Let's unpack vision a bit for a second. I'll come back to foretelling. When in a vision, what does that mean? I have a vision. See the future? Okay, so like foretelling. So is vision synonymous with foretelling then, I guess, so far? Well, okay. Well, what if I told you that, and you can probably see this pretty quickly, actually, if you go back and revisit these chapters. The vast majority of biblical prophecy does not try to be foretelling. It doesn't try to predict. It's what we call forthtelling. It tries to interpret what's going on. Some of it takes the nature of foretelling. This is where it does get tricky, because you're not wrong in saying foretelling, vision. I mean, we just read a vision of Isaiah, right? But it's often the case that when we hear the word prophecy and vision, we think of that. We just think of vision of the future, prediction of tomorrow, that kind of thing. But it was a little broader back in the biblical times. Vision was more like God's vision on the world, right? And God's vision on the world does encompass tomorrow. God's will for it's God's will for the world, right? And so it may be that that will is not fully realized until tomorrow, but that doesn't mean that God doesn't have the will for this today. And so the prophet's job is to sort of pull those together, pull the people into tomorrow, if you will. It's to interpret what's happening today in the light of what they know to be God's will ultimately. And so a lot of the Bible's prophecy, the vast majority of it, in fact, is what we call forthtelling, not foretelling, but forthtelling. It's telling the people, this is not how it should be, that it should be otherwise than this. So some of the words of condemnation here, I mean, we heard from the passage that Gordon already talked about here. What in Isaiah 1, the faithful city has become a whore, right? It's not the faithful city will be this tomorrow. I predict one day the faithful city will be unfaithful. It's right now. The faithful city is not faithful. And if you go back and reread, you're going to see that's what most of this is about. It's interpreting what's going on now. But there is a day will come when the mountain of the Lord will be established, right? A shoot will come up from the root of Jesse. That is going to happen. There will be this peaceable kingdom. So you have this beautiful vision of Isaiah 11. This will come, but it is stated right smack next to the faithful city is awfully unfaithful. So what does that do to the people that are hearing it? It gives them, this is what God wants. This is how it's supposed to be. There's supposed to be justice on this earth. There's supposed to be harmony among God's creatures. And there's everything but that. And the reason there's everything but that is that we are part of an unjust, unrighteous, unfaithful world order. And God is calling us not to be like that. Now, if you're the king and you're hearing this, and you're hearing not only are we the people like this, but you are God's representative. You are the one who's supposed to be leading us into faithfulness. You are supposed to be the premier example of this righteous king. And here's where the time thing gets bent a little bit. When Isaiah speaks of the righteous king, who does he have in mind? Do you think? Christ, looking forward, maybe a messianic. Yeah, there are some messianic elements to Isaiah. But he also has an image looking backward. David. That's the righteous king. So if you're a king and you're hearing this prophet, what he's saying is you're not like him. But God has promised that his throne will endure forever. Why? Because he was faithful and you're not. And if you're going to be our leader, you need to be more like that. How well would you respond? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And now, so, okay, good, very good. The brutal Assyrians knocking at the door. So, big picture context here. Isaiah, son of Amos, his own life would have been in about the middle to late part of the 8th century. So let's just say 750, early part of the 750 to 700, late or early 600, 680, so right in that frame, okay? That's Isaiah's time. Maybe even a little before 750. But so Isaiah then is prophesying here with Assyria right on the doorstep of especially the northern kingdom. And there are allusions to that. Damascus and Samaria, they're going to be wiped out by the Assyrians. There's also a reference here to this war that took place. So Damascus and Samaria. There's also, we read about in 2 Kings, they call it the Syro-Ephraimite war. Basically what happened is a northern king allied with a series of other kings against Judah, the southern kingdom, basically because Judah said, Judah pulled out and said, we're not going to help you. What was happening is the Syrian army was coming and it was conquering these small towns on its way toward Jerusalem. Not just Jerusalem, but just really the whole of Palestine. I mean, they were just taking it over. And as this is happening, the northern king of Israel allied with other kings around to fight them, to resist. And Judah said, we're not going to do it. We're not getting in on this battle. So then they went to war against Judah to try to install another king that would be sympathetic to this campaign against the Assyrians. So that's part of what's going on here. That's when I say forthtelling, this is the time in which Isaiah is living. He's watching this happen with all the people around. They're experiencing this great threat, this looming dark threat is on their horizon marching toward them. But then they have this own other threat. And so their king is thinking, well, maybe we ally with Egypt, right? Maybe Egypt could help us against these other kings. And then Isaiah, you read about what Isaiah has to say about that. Egypt, they're weak. They're not going to save you. Don't do that. But now what is this prophet doing? He's just speaking right to the political reality of the time. He's not just predicting it tomorrow. He's telling the king, this is what the Lord says. Bad strategic move. Don't want to do that. That'll be a big mistake. So it's I don't know, I'm trying to give a sense it's this comprehensive sense of, okay, there is a tomorrow here. If Assyria keeps coming, this is going to be really bad. But it's also, why are they coming? And that's part of the prophet's job too. I mean, if you were to summarize, what does Isaiah have to say? How is Assyria described by Isaiah? Like, what is it? What role does it have? It's a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool in God's hand. Why? Judah is as unfaithful as a harlot, right? God's people have forsaken God. So God isn't just going to rain fire and brimstone down like in Sodom and Gomorrah. He's got another means to bring punishment to the people, judgment upon them. Assyria has grown in power. Let them come through. Let them come in. And then eventually Babylon will do that. But this is where, again, there is this predictive element, or some would say later authorship, but the Babylonians will come through about a century and a half later, and they will accomplish what the Assyrians did not. It's really interesting. I should have brought it. Shoot. Oh, I have it in the office. Maybe I can bring it. It's a book called Hidden Riches. But we're almost out of time. I'll bring it next time because we have some more of Isaiah next time. But in this book, there are I could share an account from the Assyrian side of what happened when they got to Jerusalem during the reign of Hezekiah, who was mentioned here in these opening chapters, right? We read about Hezekiah in 2 Kings 18, by the way. So we have Hezekiah in 2 Kings. We have Hezekiah here in the book of Isaiah. Right here, living situation. And with Hezekiah, the Assyrian army comes, but it is does not successfully sack the city. It doesn't take Jerusalem. And of course, that's interpreted as God's deliverance by Israel's prophets. But I have a reading, there's a writing that references this even by the Assyrians. We'll compare. We'll look at how they understood it. But the point is that, they're essentially looking to, Israel is looking to God, and and that's the role of the prophet. Why is this happening? Why is God not on our side? And Isaiah is saying, well, you've been really unfaithful. Why should God be on your side? God has brought this enemy to exercise God's judgment. But in the midst of all of that, hope, light. God will not leave God's people, not forsake God's people completely. I don't know. And so that's what we have. We have these different prophecies in these slightly different situations. They're all collected together. That's going to be Isaiah. That's going to be Jeremiah. Ezekiel will read a little less like that, but just FYI. But we'll get to those in turn. Thoughts, questions, comments? Is there anything in particular here? We talked about this with the Psalms. I mean, is there anything that you read in these passages that you find inspiring and hopeful? And yeah, Holly.
7 and 9.
Yeah.
And that was one of the bright spots, I thought,
Yeah.
where he said, See, the virgin will conceive and have a son and name him Emmanuel.
Yeah.
And then in 9, for a child will be born to us, a son be given to us, and
Yeah.
the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. The dominion will be vast, and its prosperity will never end.
Yep. And keep going.
And he will reign on the throne of David
There it is.
and over his kingdom, to establish and sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. The zeal of the Lord of armies will accomplish this.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part of all of it.
I can understand why. Yeah, it's such a beautiful, exalted passage. And here you have what we were just saying. David, his throne, your messianic hope, right? This will happen. We won't go into all the history of how that's been interpreted, but obviously the New Testament authors see this as obviously a kind of picture of what's going to come with Jesus, but in that way, Jesus is referred to as a son of David, right? He's the fulfillment. He's this. John.
A lot of these, when the prophets are talking, it's kind of in real time type of thing.
Yeah.
How is this message being distributed among the people, and who were they talking to? Were they standing just on the street corner and
Great.
prophesying?
Great.
And even at that, how many people would know this at the time? To be
Great.
relevant?
That's a good question. Shoot, I wanted to find the actual passage. Did you catch I don't have the chapter and verse written down. I should have. Did you catch where Isaiah was told to walk around naked for 3 years? These are eccentric people. Wait till you see some of the stuff Ezekiel does. They were quite eccentric folks. And boy, did he really walk around naked for 3 years? He might have, actually. To answer your question, he'll walk around Jerusalem naked. Why? This is how you're going into exile. Everybody's going to be stripped naked. Brutal. Yeah. So he's commanded. He hears a word. He sees a vision from the Lord. But can you hear how simultaneously this has both a forward-looking nature to it, but also a forth-telling in the moment nature to it, right? It's a word of judgment. I'm walking around naked, representing all of us in our unfaithfulness who are about to be shipped out to exile because of our unfaithfulness. So it's both saying what's coming, but also deeply poignant in the moment. So yeah, that's how. It was just, that's how they worked. They would stand, they would walk, they would do different things build a model city and lay siege to it. Will be one that's going to come here in a couple of, not for Isaiah, but later. They were creative in trying to express their message. Some of them, now, one last point to your answer. What's also critical when we read these things, like, if you will, scholars, I don't like to use that word much, but one of the things they're looking at is evidence that the prophet had the ear of the royal palace. And it does seem that Isaiah did. Isaiah was actually sought out as someone that the king wanted to come and hear from. Eventually, another king can come in and kill him. But that's always an interest. Isaiah would be prophesying in public, the walking around naked for 3 years kind of thing, but he would also be prophesying directly to the king. And that changes things. Sometimes that changes things here. Hezekiah gets sick, you might recall, right? And Isaiah says, you're going to die. Right to his face. God tells me you're done. But then what does Hezekiah do? He goes, he turns and he prays, and he offers this prayer to the Lord, and the Lord changes his mind. I'll give you 15 more years, right? So this is interacting with the prophet right there. So there's that going on too. But not all the prophets seem to have had, and again, depending on the king, had that kind of intimacy with the king. It would depend on the prophet and the king. But they would all be prophesying in a way that the king would be implicated, and we can be very confident that the king is hearing what they're saying. Maybe the king has and this is the false prophet thing, so the king has their favorite prophets because they're telling them what they want to hear, right? And Jesus talks about this when we get to the New Testament, right? And Paul or the author of the pastoral epistles. The day is going to come when people only will listen to what they want to hear. That's an allusion to the false prophets. Jesus says that, blessed are you when you're persecuted, right? Blessed are you when you're defamed. Well, that's what they did to the prophets, right? They were defamed. The ones who were loved, those were the false prophets, Jesus says. So that there's all that dynamic. I mean, we enter into that history, and we can imagine how the royal palaces are functioning, and they're bringing in these advisors to tell them what God wants them to do. And then some aren't that faithful. Some don't care that much what God wants them to do. Or some's like, why should I listen to that God? I like this God better. And that all is part of it. Pretty crazy stuff, huh? But in the midst of all, hopefully you get some sense, marinate in that history a little bit as we continue to read. And what I think is, what I kind of wanted to leave us with here a little bit is, we have things that are context specific, things that are actually happening in Israel with Israel's people and kings and nations that are coming to it. But it sounds like, based on Leo's comment, I'm so glad, it's a great way to bookend this. Start with it and end with it. You see universal applicability here, and I do too, right? So these prophecies have to do with this immediate threat, but they also have to do a whole lot. I can read them today and feel the force of this language for myself too. I think I see you're shaking your head. I still feel like one of the most beautiful passages in the whole of the scriptures is Isaiah 11. How can you not be moved? I've memorized it, but I'll forget part if I don't. But a shoot shall come up from the stump of Jesse. Here's more messianic stuff, right? Stump of Jesse, who's that? David. The shoot is going to come out of David, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, counsel and might, knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see or what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He'll strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. It's staggering, that vision, right? The knowledge of the Lord, everyone has it. And because every creature has the knowledge of the Lord, there's no more harming or killing. That's a vision, right? That's a vision for every age, I think. So anyway, well, I hope we're going to read another one. Chapter 40, to me, is close. 11 has always been my favorite passage in Isaiah, and one of my favorite in the whole Bible. Chapter 40 is pretty amazing, too. Martin Luther King thought it was. You're gonna hear I Have a Dream speech when you read chapter 40, if you haven't had a chance, because he's going to cite it directly. So it's power. So back to Leo's point, many people advocating for justice in our world have found these words of this prophet and others, but especially Isaiah, profound and important and relevant today. So I hope we all will continue to. I encourage you to keep reading. So we'll meet in 2 weeks again. Now, Friday morning, we want to meet here again. So last time we met here was a smaller group, and that's fine if that's what it is. Just as I said, we'll go down the hall and we'll meet in the library. But how's that sound? I saw at least one head yes for meeting here again. Others, thoughts, desires? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your attention and participation, and I hope just hang in there. We're getting there. These are the long ones. Isaiah and Jeremiah. Once we get there, we finally will start the downhill toward the rest of the Old Testament. We just got to get through Isaiah and Jeremiah, and then we'll pick up speed, I promise. And we got 2 big prophets to work through first, though. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.